heard a good one yesterday. I know this is not how we start a meeting, Your Worship, but I heard a real good short line that said, thank you, said I want a big fat bank account and a slim body. And don't get the two mixed up like you did last year. That's the 2011 New Year's resolution.
There you go. Well, that's a good way to start, I guess. All right, having a look at our agenda here today, I don't see any additions outside, so I'll call for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented here.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tessier, seconded by Councillor Aker. Okie dokie. We'll call the question. Contrary-minded, motion carried. And now we'll look at the minutes for December 21st. A motion to adopt the minutes. Moved by Councillor Stoyles, seconded by Councillor Lane. Any errors or omissions from the... Yep, okay. Councillor Lane.
Gotta find it now with this new fangled technology.
At least you're using it this week.
Oh, razor blade for breakfast, Councillor Stoyles.
What a way to start the new year, eh?
Absolutely.
There you go,
Just as
shot across
saucy
the
as
bow,
ever.
right off the bat. Huh?
Just as saucy as ever.
It's a good day.
Huh?
It's a good day.
Okay, 9:32. Just a slight error there.
Okay.
The motion says Councillor Walsh, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Obviously, that should be Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Tessier.
Okay.
That was the budget motion.
Okay.
One of the budget motions.
All right. Thank you. Anything else? Any other errors or omissions? Want to bring up? None noted then. All right. Call the question. All those in favour? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried. All right. The next thing, we have no proclamations, but we have some correspondence. Let's get to that sheet here. The first one here is from Municipalities Newfoundland Labrador. That was written by President Harry Hallett to the Honourable Charlene Johnson, Minister of Department of Environment and Conservation, dealing with, of course, a resolution that the city passed at the last convention from the City of Mount Pearl with respect to moose accidents. So the letter is requesting for a meeting with the Minister to discuss the contents of the resolution that the city presented and to see what can be done to prevent the accidents that we're seeing. Anyone want to speak to that? Councillor Stoyles?
I certainly do, Your Worship, and I want to say, of course, thank you to the colleagues here in Mount Pearl for helping to bring this resolution to the floor. The meeting is taking place actually with the Minister on Thursday. At
Thursday coming?
Thursday
yep.
coming at 4:30 in the afternoon. But there was some, I guess, action today, or information today. Ches Crosby came on board today with the group and has taken on a class action suit. So I don't know where that leaves government now, if they want to meet with the Federation or not, but I know the meeting was scheduled for Thursday. But want to say that it was a great day today, having somebody like Ches Crosby come forward and take on this initiative, because it certainly affects everybody in this province. An awful lot of people have been affected by moose vehicle accidents, and just want to say that I was at the press conference there, and I'm certainly delighted to see somebody like Ches Crosby come on board and see how important this issue is, and that action really needs to be taken. And as Mr. Crosby said today, we're looking at working together with government and for action to be taken. That's what we're looking for, more so than have a court battle with government. We just want action taken. We've been setting, with nothing being done long enough, and it's an issue that affects anybody that drives on our highways.
All right, thank you, Councillor Stoyles. Anyone else want to speak to it? I do know that they made mention of City of Mount Pearl on the national news at lunchtime today. They did make reference to Ches Crosby and the City of Mount Pearl.
Mr. Crosby referenced in his press conference today, and he said one of the reasons that encouraged him to take it on, and he had been approached apparently over the years by a number of other people who were injured, and the two people who are on the class action lawsuit are two people that are totally disabled, or one person is totally disabled, and another gentleman in a wheelchair who lives will never be the same again. And he, Mr. Crosby, said that one of the reasons why he took it on was because municipalities like Mount Pearl and like the lady that was injured on her way to the convention is what convinced him more than ever that something has to be done.
All right. Well, thank you, Councillor Soils. The next piece of correspondence here is from the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, dealing with the Recreation Infrastructure Canada program. Good news here in that the deadline from March 31st, 2011 has been extended to October 31st, 2011. Anyone wish to speak to that particular?
Just briefly,
Councillor Walsh?
we did actually access. I don't think this is for new projects. It's for an extension of projects that are probably in the hopper.
Right.
We did avail of this funding for a portion of funding related to the soccer complex,
Okay.
Your Worship. That, of course, is now completed. It's been taken over, and of course, is enjoying tremendous usage, even because of our unusual early winter and late fall.
Yeah.
Even at this time of the year, you're seeing people on the field. So while it doesn't apply for us, I guess for other projects that are in the works and haven't yet been completed, it's undoubtedly good news for other municipalities, and it's good to see the flexibility in terms of the extension of time by government as well.
Yep, indeed. Anyone else? Okay, the next one is from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Again, a joint message from Infrastructure Canada and the FCM. Again, dealing with the new deadline for completing infrastructure stimulus projects. Once again, from March 31st to October 31st. As it says here, this is the federal government's response to the request by FCM and its partners for some flexibility on this deadline, and the feds have come through for. So again, another bit of good news. Or anyone wish to speak to that one there in particular? No?
Worship, one thing we should know.
Okay.
This will have a significant beneficial impact upon the city of Mount Pearl and all the municipalities who use the water service, because there was significant costs that could not be completed by March the 31st that we will now be able
Okay.
to, and it will be eligible. So there is a benefit to the city.
Oh, great. Yep. All right, thank you for pointing that out there. Mr. Lewis? All right, if there's no other questions on that, we're to our committee reports. And first up is Community Services, and Councillor Walsh is the chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, it's that time of the year again for the Frosty Festival
Wow.
just around the corner. In fact, we're into scheduling of news conferences and kickoffs and all those sorts of things. And related to that, Your Worship, we provide normally $30,000 to assist with the organization and the running of the Frosty Festival. And they've been planning events and scheduling meetings on a somewhat regular basis since the conclusion, quite frankly, of last year's Frosty Festival. So it's kind of a continuous and ongoing thing. But now they're ready to get serious about it and ramping up in terms of payments and commitments for the various entertainers, groups, dinners, and the like. So we're asking permission, as we do each year at this time, to release 50% or $15,000 of that grant so they can carry on their work and be prepared for what will inevitably be another fantastic Frosty Festival for this
Indeed.
year. Thank you, Your Worship, and I ask for the leave of council for support for that motion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Walsh and seconded by Councillor Lane. Councillor Lane?
No, I'm just getting ready to move
Okay.
on.
I was going to say maybe we could have a soccer game this year with no snow. I mean,
You may be able to do that this year.
the avid golfers I notice on the news every day, they're still playing here, which we're the envy of probably most of North America and most of Canada. So,
Some people in Florida.
indeed, indeed. All right, so that's it for community services. We'll move on. Councillor Lane was hot out of the gate.
At the gate.
Did I call the question?
No.
Oh, my apologies. Call the question. Okay, all those in favour? Contrary-minded? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Lane is anxious to start his report.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is Corporate Services Committee.
Okay, the first item, Your Worship, relates to the Sustainable Communities Conference, and that's being put off by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. That's one of their two annual conferences, and we have a request from yourself and the CAO to attend. It'll be taking place on February 8th to the 12th in Victoria, British Columbia, and the committee is recommending approval as it falls within Council's and Senior Management's professional development cap, and I so move.
Okay.
During Frosty.
Well, this was what I raised earlier, that when I looked at this, I would have thought that it was the next year, because I thought the next week, because I thought it always fell with Valentine's Day. So that's unfortunate. Okay, moved by Councillor Lane and seconded by Councillor Tessier. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Aker.
Just curious, and please Mr. Lewis, don't take this in any way the wrong way, but we will have a new CAO here at the city in the next few months. Will the cap be available for the new CAO as well? Is that the way the cap system works here? It's really based on the person as opposed to the position?
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, we're getting a nod from both.
Perfect, thank you. That's all I wanted to clarify.
Okay. No trouble. All right, any other questions? All right, call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
Next item, Your Worship, we have a request from our Director of Corporate Services, Ms. Peach, to attend the IPAC 6th National Leadership Conference that's taking place February 6th to the 8th in Toronto. Once again, that falls under professional development, and I so move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Questions or comments? No, call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
Next, Your Worship, we have invoices for approval, and 1 through 24 is listed, totaling $2,623,192.47. I so move.
Moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Any comments or questions on that? No? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
That's it, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Our next committee is Engineering Services, and Councillor Aker has the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item here from Engineering Services is the... One moment, please. Little technical difficulties. I'm on Corporate Services again. Yeah, the Hillside development. As everybody knows, that development basically has been put on hold. It's a lot of the construction's been done. No lots have ever been sold up there. But basically right now, the developer is in a position, I guess, where they are trying to refinance that particular project, and there's several deficiencies that are up there, and we want to make sure, primarily for the public safety, that these deficiencies are corrected. So we've gone out, and this is to be funded, by the way, from the security that the developer has given us on the project. The security is in the amount of $200,000. We've received quotes from 2 companies, the lowest being $67,016.91 from J3 Consulting. And I move that we accept this quote and that the J3 will go up there and fix up all the outstanding deficiencies. And I so move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Aker and seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Any comments or questions? Councillor Lane?
Yeah, just a question, Your Worship, I guess perhaps for Mr. Lush. Just wondering, we had, as Council is aware, we had significant issues up there last year as it related to silting into Branscombs Pond. So I'm assuming that maybe I don't know if these deficiencies include making sure that that issue is taken care of. Certainly I haven't had any complaints in the last number of months since they stopped digging, but I assume that that site would be secured in such a way as to prevent any silting. Would that be correct?
Mr. Lush?
Yes, Your Worship, silting fences have been put in place, but and may have to be continue to be maintained after every storm event, so it has been reinstated.
Okay, good. Any other comments or questions? No, call the question then. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
The next item, Your Worship, is a change order number 6, as it pertains to the Glacier Arena expansion. This is CP2, the interior fit-up. The amount of the change order is $12,867.06, and basically you can see the list of items that are there, including, for example, removing the existing Glacier signage, and basically the sign that's up there is woefully inadequate, and this was deemed to be the best way of getting a new sign up there, so that's in addition to the contract. I note there's $1,870 here to remove the hoarding fence, and that's just labor. Apparently we're going to take all that plywood, we're going to inventory it, and we're going to reuse that when we go to do the new multiplex. So
That's a good idea.
that's money well spent as well.
Indeed.
And the total, and I make the motion that we approve this change order, and of course, you know, a new plan, our consultants along with staff are recommending it in the amount of $12,867.06.
Okay, moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Any comments or questions?
Yes, I got to make a comment, I
Okay,
guess.
Councillor Lane?
Your Worship. First of all, I think based on the last time we had one of these go through, at that point in time we were over budget, were we not? So that's going to put us further over budget, I'm assuming. And I guess it just raises the bigger question for me to some degree is, you know, and I understand that's the way it's done generally, I suppose, but we build in these contingencies And it seems to me that on every project, certainly I've been involved with since I came to council, whether it be this one, the depot, whatever, it's almost like the contingency is almost, one could argue, it's a open check to start writing. It's like an open checkbook to start saying, okay, we got a 20% contingency, whether we need it or not. We're spending every cent of that money. Now we've eaten up the entire 20% contingency. We went over budget last time I asked. Now we're going further over budget. I look at something here like, this is just one little example, and it may be quite legitimate, but change glass and new ticket booth, okay? So it's only a small item, but the question is, if I assume that was never going to be done. Originally, we weren't going to change the glass. The glass was good enough. Now we're there and we're saying, well, we should put in, and maybe I'm not correct in saying that, but it could seem like, well, seeing as how we're here anyway, let's change the glass. Let's do this. Let's do it. So how many other things are we sort of on the fly? Someone said, well, it'd be nice if we did this, nice if we done that, we should do this, we should do that. But if these were things that were not necessarily considered originally when the building was designed, and it's going to not only eat up a contingency, which I would argue is supposed to be there for just that, an emergency, not to say, well, we're going to spend every dime. Now we're going over budget, and I would wonder if some of these things should not be coming to council or whatever beforehand to understand that these are additional things we're going to put here, and we decide if it fits within the budget or not, as opposed to an afterthought. And I know it's the way we've done it, but I will point out this is a huge project, a contingency of 20%, gone beyond that, and now we're over budget on it. Not a lot over budget, I understand, but as a matter of process, how we do things, I wonder, especially when we're going to get into a much larger project now with the swimming pool and the multiplex, I wouldn't want us to see us continue on with this whole thing of, well, we got to continue to, we can add this, add that, and not go to council, first of all, get approval and make sure that these are things that we can afford or we want to spend money on,
Sure, yep.
So I just throw it out there to the committee for some consideration of how we do it maybe in the future, but that is a concern I have.
Councillor Aker was going to respond to that, yeah?
Yeah, I agree, Councillor Lane. My first point is that this amount of funding was already included in the update we gave just in the last meeting of last year. They knew that change order was in the works, which is in a sense, though, that's the weakness. Now, maybe I'm saying that too strongly, but that is the problem that you're identifying. Now that we've used up the contingency, I guess the question is, should some of this be approved by council prior to the work being done? Typically what we're doing now is we're approving these change orders, even though they're small, but we're kind of approving them after the fact. But I agree, we've got to be a little bit more diligent as we bring this project to the close. Perhaps some of these things do need to be done, but perhaps they shouldn't be funded from the Glacier budget. Perhaps they should be funded from the city's regular operating budget. For example, putting up a new sign, I mean, that could be done any time, right? From the point of view of, it doesn't have to be done when new construction is on the go and there's a contract out there. That could have been done anyway. Right?
Yeah, just one final point, Your Worship.
Councillor Lane?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Aker, I agree with you, but I just want to reiterate, my point is not just about the fact that we have eaten up the contingency, so now, therefore, we should be being more careful with these expenditures and what we're approving. My argument is that we should not be viewing the 20% contingency as an open checkbook to start approving whatever. I guess the bottom line is we approve whatever the original project was. If we want to start adding things over and above that, whether there's a contingency or not, it should still come to council and we decide whether we want. Because adding the 20% into the price, to me, doesn't mean that we spend it all. It means that here's what we're going to spend, and we got this emergency slush fund, if you will, if we need it. But if we don't need it, then that's money that comes off the capital cost, and money we don't have to pay back. So that's the only point I'm making there.
Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, I think there's some assumption being made that is very, very misleading here. We don't take the 20% and assume that 20% contingency can be used for anything. In fact, every expenditure that we have, whether it be in Councillor Aker's budget or a budget that's allocated to community services or your own budget, Councillor Lane, every one of those items have to be presented to council. They're usually debated, discussed, reviewed in committee. A recommendation comes to committee of the whole. It's discussed in committee of the whole, and then it's brought forward for approval in council, like this one was prior to Christmas. And my understanding and experience is that we've been fairly fairly prudent in reviewing those budgets and in approving, change orders or contingency funds. I think the problem relates to the volatility of the market, particularly for the last 2 or 3 years in particular. But Councillor Lane is not incorrect when he says it seems like we always exhaust the contingency.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't operate or predicate our decisions on the basis that there's 20% there and let's go at it and let's use it. And I think...
I'm not suggesting we are.
No, I know, but I think the level of debate and discussion that I'm hearing here seems to be we need to change our approach on this when our approach is actually fairly forthright and very, very transparent to all of council.
Mm-hmm.
What I seem to detect was that Councillor Aker or me or you or anybody else can bring forward change orders because the 20% is allowed and it doesn't have to come to council. That's not what happens.
Right.
Every single one of these comes to council and has to be approved and generally presented and discussed in tremendous detail in committee. And at that point, a recommendation is put forth whether or not to bring it to the full council or not. So I just want to make the point because I don't think it's it's a kind of a modus operandi of this council to look at 20% and say, all right, as long as we're within that 20%, we're going to approve it in committee, at committee of the whole, and at council. It's not how it works,
Right.
not how it has worked, but I think we have suffered, as too many others have,
Because of the
and we
market.
look at huge projects like the wastewater treatment facility and others where the overruns have been, in the last 5 years, have been really, really enormous. Having said all that, I know that community service and this council has just approved probably the largest single expenditure in the multiplex that we've ever undertaken in our history. And we're being given reasonable assurances, that these are good figures, that they're reasonably good figures, and that the contingency is reasonably safe. That's not to say, and I wouldn't think, and I hope that we're not recommending that in this meeting or any going forward, that we can't look if we need to look at it, because I'm certain that there'll be things in that size of a project that we will probably not think of and will have to perhaps come back. And that's what they're there for, as well as for other changes in, for example, you put something out on a subcontract and it comes in higher than you anticipated. Well, there's not a lot you can do,
Right.
We haven't gone to contract on that one yet. But, I just want to make that point. I don't want the public to be misled in terms of thinking we assume 20% is part of the budget and we go from there, because
Right.
nothing can be further from the truth.
Okay, good point. Our CEO, Mr. Lewis, wants to make a point.
Well, that's basically the point that I want to make. We do look at those very carefully, and all of those are approved. And there are something, and I think the thing that catches most of us, whenever you're trying to put a new building and attach it to an older building, and when you're in there making changes, there are day-to-day things that have to be approved. And let me tell you, lots of things that have come through, and Scott can
Turned
reiterate,
down.
that are turned down, that don't get here, and we try to do, like the last one we brought in was the delay claim, something we had, the weather had
Right.
major impacts upon it, and either way again, the relocation of the power line, the relocation of the water line, all of these things were extraordinary things that we utilized and negotiated hard with the contractors to try to lower that price and try wherever possible to keep it within the minimum amounts of there. And we look at that very, very carefully. And matter of fact, I was reviewing with our with our director of corporate services today, all of the contingencies and making sure, because it was things that we put in there, like this one coming up next is the score clock. It had nothing to do with the contingency and budget, but there's nowhere else to fund it from there. So yes, we're going to be over. We'll look in our 2010 and see where operational savings, where there are capital savings potentially for different things, and the same thing on a go forward 2011. And we will try to accommodate that so that we bring those projects in as close as possible by managing the contingency in a fairly responsible manner to the best interest of the city.
Right. Okay. Any other comments? So yes, to Councillor Lane's point, you can sense the frustration, but again, just to summarize, we don't expect to spend it. It's not like my kids years ago going away on hockey trips and you give them pocket money and here's an extra $50 if you need it. Well, you know what? They always seem to need it when they come home, don't they? But so it's not that simple. So A lot of
No, Your Worship, and I'm not suggesting, by the way, because I don't want to be misled the other way either. I am not suggesting that this council is on a whim approving all kinds of projects
Right.
that were not included. That is not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting, though, is like it's anything else, that you could get contractors or people in there and all of a sudden someone says, well, you know, you should do it this way, this is, or you should add this, or you should add that, or whatever, and it all adds up. That's
Right.
all I'm suggesting.
Yep, valid
And
point.
got to be careful of it, because I have not seen one yet that's come within budget. Everything we do is always the same. Contingency, bottom line is, it always comes in up to the maximum of the contingency or over. That's been the experience. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm saying that's the reality of the way it's been.
Right. Okay.
Question.
Yep. Any other comments?
Question.
Pardon me?
I just asked you to call the question.
Okay. Let's call the question. Councillor Stoyles wants to push on. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Councillor Aker, if you would.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good discussion, because the glacier really is the smaller piece when you compare that to the multiplex. So
Right.
it's probably a good little warning across all of our bows, given the way the market's going in terms of pricing and the like, right? So.
Yep. Indeed.
All right, the next item is the tender for the provision of 2 arena scoreboards. These are being installed up at the glacier. I guess Glacier 1 and Glacier 2. I guess no names have really been decided yet. We had one bid from Clark Electronics in the amount of $21,856.56, HST included. I was a bit concerned that there was only one bid, because you like to see more competitive bids to assure yourself you're getting a decent price. But I understand that this was well within the estimate that we prepared before the tender. So it seems like this is a good bid, and I so move.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Comments or questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. And that's it for engineering services. The next up is Planning and Land Use Development Committee. And Councillor Aker, you're on right now.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item there is building and site improvements for 1123 Topsa Road and One Trout Place. This is City Tire and Auto Centre, and I think Bay New Plan is acting on their behalf. We're in receipt of a development application on behalf of City Tire, proposing building and site improvements at the address I just mentioned. Phase 1 of the work will include the demolition of an existing warehouse and construction of a new 1,200 square meter building. This extension will go south of the existing office building and will temporarily accommodate a general garage use. Phase 2 later on includes the proposed demolition of the existing building fronting on Topsail Road, which will demolition and then the construction of a new 972 square meter building in place to accommodate a general garage use. What they'll do then is the building that they just constructed, the 1,200 meter building, they'll basically change the use of that to a combined office, warehousing, and associated tire storage use, and that's where the issue comes up. So we had to go through a public process whereby we consulted with the public. Basically, this property is in the mixed development use zone. And the proposed expansion of the warehouse use is defined as light industrial use, which is listed as a discretionary use in our zone. Therefore, the application had to be processed in accordance with Condition 3 of the MDU zone table. And that's my phone. Well, that's a good time for that to ring, isn't it? Excuse me for a second.
Hello. Yeah, I'll pick it up on the way home. All right. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, Councillor Aker.
Was that you, Councillor Lane?
Or Councillor Stoyles.
Oh my. A notice of the application was published in the Telegram on December 18, 2010. The notice was also circulated to 43 property and business owners within 150 meter radius of the subject property. Council and directors were advised of the development and the briefing session on December 15th, and the notice was also posted on the city's webpage. The city did not, I reiterate, did not receive any representation or inquiry in response to the public notice. Hence, the briefing session originally scheduled for January 5th was cancelled. So basically, we see no issues with this from an internal point of view or from an external point of view. The motion is as follows. That the application by Bay New Plan on behalf of City Tire and Auto for the proposed building and site improvements at 1123 Topsa Road and One Trout Place in 2 phases be approved and a development permit be issued subject to the following conditions. Determination of the limits of the city land that is to be acquired and transferred to City Tire and Auto Limited. I'll explain that one shortly. early.
Mm-hmm.
The development meeting, the requirements are set up by the St. John's Regional Fire Department and Newfoundland Power, the signing of the development agreement prior to any building permits being issued, and of course internal requirements from our finance division, inspection services, planning services, and engineering services, and of course meeting all the regulations of the City of Mount Pearl, both the building and the development regulations.
Mm-hmm.
That is the motion. With regards to, there's a strip of land that's required here to get the parking right. And this is in the city's right-of-way.
Along Trout Place,
And
yes?
there's, along
Yep.
Trout Place. So there's a couple of options. Either we could deed the land over to the owner, or we could also do a license to occupy, basically. And I believe that that's something that the city will work out with the proponents at a later date. By making this motion, we give the city staff leave to go ahead and do that. Is that my correct assumption?
Mm-hmm.
And there you have it. And I so move.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Aker and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Any comments or questions? No? Call the question. All those in favour? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
The next item, Your Worship, has to do with the property at 20 Merle Drive. The owners are proposing to construct a 15.83 square meter building extension to the front of the existing building, as well as to construct a 9 square meter building extension at the rear of the dwelling and to enclose the existing rear stairwell. Essentially, they're basically covering up or extending their entrances on the
Right.
building. Right? Yeah. Subject property is located within the residential medium density land use zone, and the minimum building line setback standard in that zone is 8 meters. To be able to accommodate the proposed extension in front of the dwelling with a building line setback of 7.2 meters, the applicant is requesting a 10% variance to the building line setback standard. And again, we had to go through a public consultation process because this variance will require the approval of council. When did we advertise that? Oh, public notice. There you go. Public notice.
Probably consulting the public on that one too, I would say.
I would say, right? Yeah. Notice of the application was mailed to 117 property owners within 150 meters of the subject property on November 25th, in accordance with Council's public notification policy. The deadline for the submission to the city respecting the development notice was December 13th. The city did not receive any written submissions or verbal inquiries in opposition to the public notification. As you can see, there's internal commentary there. The motion is that the application for a variance request that reduces the minimum building line setback standard at 20 Merle Drive to 7.2 meters to accommodate a building extension be approved, subject to the conditions outlined there, which are basically the City of Mount Pearl's regulations, as well as any internal requirements of its departments. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Comments or questions? Call the question. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
All right, third item has to do with a home-based business application for a taxi dispatch at 62 Glendale Avenue. Basically, what the proponent would like to do is have a little building out in the back of the property which would act as a taxi stand. The main issue with that is that really is a commercial activity in a residential neighborhood, and essentially is going to cause a lot of disturbance or problems. But generally, I guess the bottom line, that's a commercial activity, and when it went through committee, the committee did not look favorably on that. The other part of the application is a taxi dispatch, which would be in the house, which would include just an operator. The proponent says that there would be no people coming and going, it would just purely be operated. But this is not listed as what we would normally call a home-based business.
Right.
So for that reason, the Planning and Development Committee and the department are recommending that we not approve this application, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Tessier.
Yeah,
Councillor Lane has a comment or question?
yeah. Well, for obvious reasons, I totally agree. Just as a matter of process, though, more than anything else, I'm just wondering. This is a non-permitted use. It's a non-discretionary use. So if it's not permitted and there's no discretion, why did it even come to council? I would think that in the interest of process and we're trying to streamline things, I would think that in those cases staff would simply say, I'm sorry, it's not permitted, there's no discretion, go away, and we wouldn't even be talking about it.
Mr. Yevchak, respond to that.
Your Worship, we do have a policy. It was a policy about, I guess almost back 1990 or so, where items such as refusals, subdivisions, anything that goes public comes to council for the final decision. And so anything that is recommended for refusal will automatically come to council for council's final determination. Excuse me. If council wants to change that and delegate that authority to staff, then that's a debate, I guess, for council.
Okay.
Your Worship, if that being the case, I'm going to recommend that that issue go back to the committee. We've talked about, as you know, trying to streamline our meetings. Whether it be, I mean, this particular issue would have had to go through the appropriate committee of council, possibly committee of the whole, and then to council. Just got dealing with it 3 times. If this is something which is it's not permitted under our regulations, and it's not discretionary, even if I wanted to agree with it, which I never would in this particular case,
Right.
I couldn't do it anyway.
Okay.
So to me, as a matter of process, it's just a total doesn't need to come here. So I'm just recommending that it would go to committee to look at changing that 1990 policy, whatever it was, and then we can have some discussion as to whether we all agree we want to do that. But that's what I'm recommending,
Okay.
Your Worship. Requesting.
Yep. Councillor Walsh?
I'm not sure that I disagree with Councillor Lane, but I will say that in my time on council here, it has been through either situations whereby applications were turned down, and there may have been situations where there was or was not any discretion, but it didn't meet the regulations. And on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, we'd say, you know what, that just doesn't make sense. Maybe we should have a look at the regulation. Maybe we should revise or amend the regulation or the zoning component or something else. And out of that comes some fairly fruitful discussion and maybe an amended zone or regulation or even, in fact, some of our discretionary components were actually changed as a result of some discussion and debate
Right.
about whether we should do it. So I'm not entirely sure that I'm all for streamlining the process. But when you turn something down like this, I'd love to at least have an opportunity to see it in committee, if not in council. Maybe what Councillor Lane is proposing should be that maybe not everything needs to come forward in the public council chamber, but maybe to have a look at it in committee at whole or in some other venue may be sufficient. But sometimes if you don't see it at all, you don't get to understand the intricacies of the various components of the
that's
planning
fair.
process that it goes through,
Yeah.
and maybe we could miss something. That's my only commentary there.
Okay. Yep. Fair. Councillor Spoils?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to say I certainly agree with what Councillor Walsh said, but I think sometimes when somebody is putting an application, they want to see it in public. They want to know that we saw it.
Right.
They need to know that council saw it and dealt with it. How many times do something go through staff and if we don't see it, then we're complaining on the other end? I think it's important for the residents to know that we did see it and what our reaction is on it. And I certainly support the recommendation on this issue. And I know how Councillor Lane, why he's saying, that sometimes we don't need to be dealing with all these things. But I think it's important for the people who put those, this proposal forward, that it's important for him and for I'm saying him or her and the company that was looking to operate to know that we did deal with it in the public chamber.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Lane?
Again, I didn't mean to start a big debate, but it seems like every time I say something, we're getting into a debate. But that's fine. I can argue.
Are you getting the
there's
message
not-
here?
There's not a person here or anywhere else that I don't mind having a debate with. But no, I mean, the only counter to that, though, is that if you had to look at it that way, then what's the point of having any regulations in place and having staff dealing with anything? Because you could argue every single issue I ever brought, every time I applied to put a patio on my house and it got turned down because it was the wrong size or the wrong location, it's coming to council. And I think at some point in time, we have professional people, we have policies and procedures. At some point in time, you don't want to micromanage everything. If this was something, to Councillor Walsh's point, that was, that you could see some where staff looked at it and said, yeah, under our regulations, this doesn't really fit, but we can see some merit maybe if council wants to look at changing a regulation. But in the case of somebody sticking a taxi stand in the middle of a residential area, which is not permitted, not discretionary, in this particular example, I just see it as a total waste of council's time. But anyway, just my opinion.
Well, if in response to, and And that's why I said at the beginning, Your Worship, that there is this part of me that understands where you're coming from.
Right.
But let me just say this. Some of the most contentious and hotly debated development issues, for example, by our neighbors in the city of St. John's, are developments that simply don't meet the regulations. But they still come to council, they still have a debate about it, they don't fit the regulations, they don't fit the zoning, they don't fit the heritage designation, but they discuss them.
Right.
They have an opportunity to see them, and sometimes you will use that impetus to make the changes. I'm not entirely right, you're not entirely wrong. I'd love to be able to see it. No, I'm serious. I'd say I'd love to be able to see it at least in the committee of the whole, because I think my experience over the last 9 years has been real merit. And I'd like to think, Mr. Yefchik, you may see it entirely different, but I'd like to think that at times we've revised applications and revised our regulations throughout that process
Because
so
of
that
that.
we've actually made them better and refined them, at least more suitable to what we'd like to see. That's my only point. Seeing them does provide us with another set of eyes beyond what happens at the staff level, and sometimes it can be, that can be a good use of our time, for sure, as council.
Okay, good.
Your Worship, the only point I'll make is that based on
Time limit on this?
yeah, the only quick point I'm going to make is that comparing us to that crowd down the concrete bunker, I rest my case. Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
All right, let's get back to the proposed, the motion here. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion's carried. All right, and the next one, Councillor Aker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes,
permits.
we have our building construction permits, residential as well as commercial. These are the final numbers for the year ended, the calendar year ended December 31st, yeah. And the total for the period was $88,250 for the residential, bringing the total for the year to $20,364,610. And also the building construction permits for commercial for the period, which is, by the way, sorry about that, December 11th to the 31st. Total for the period was $76,000, and that brought the total to $26,210,300. And I guess the commercial gang outdid the residential gang this year. But that must have been a fairly good year. Is that up over the previous year? Right?
Mr. Yefchik?
We're not quite sure. We're just crunching the comparative numbers right now, Your Worship.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have something for council by next council meeting.
All righty, good.
I think it is up, but I don't
Yeah.
want
All
to
right.
suggest that it is, but I think it is.
We'll check on that, yeah?
Yeah, it'd be nice to get an update next council meeting. Thank you. The third thing is civil works. I'll make one motion at the end if that pleases council. Civil works for the period December 11th to the 31st were $164,250, bringing the total for the year to $72,874,910. And that's it. And I so move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Yep, question?
I've got a building construction, commercial and residential civil works for the dates of January 1st to the 7th of this year.
Yeah, another motion coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry.
yep.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll move the permits for the period December 11th to the 31st.
Right. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried.
And the last one is for the period January 1st to the 7th, 2011. It's all residential, and it's in the amount of $1,952,000, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Questions, comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried. And that is it for our committee reports. Next is new business, and I forget where we started last time. Mr. CEO is pointing across the hall, so that's Councillor Tessier. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring to Council's attention and to the public's attention as well that our diversion rates for recycling are climbing still.
Oh, good.
We're doing very well, but as of December 30th, our diversion rates, I believe, are at 19%, which is actually enviable. Because I know, I think the HRM municipality, I think their goal was 15% with recycling. They've been doing this long before us, and we're actually at 19 right now. So that's really something to be proud of. That's really good news. And I know that there's still a little confusion about recycling days, about when you put out your recycling. It's bi-weekly, but the committee is going to have a look at the numbers as well, look at the schedule, and see if the schedule is actually fitting the needs of the residents. and make a determination from there. But until that time, I'd still encourage the residents to go on the website or to have a look at the packages that were sent out to them by council as well, or even to just make a phone call to City Hall if they need to, just to confirm when their recycling days are, because it's unfortunate, especially in poor weather, if the recycling goes out and gets left for the day, as it will if it's not a recycling day, because those trucks are not coming by. It would be an awful shame for those bags to then end up
Blowing down the
blowing
street.
down the street, torn open, blowing down the street, left out, lost, or buried under snow, because one day we will have snow, I'm sure. But anyway, it's,
Thursday.
it is a good news. It's a very,
That's a
very
great
good
news story.
because that's 19% that we'd be paying for in our regular household waste. And really, and we're doing something really good for the environment. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
So that
It's
must have
good
saved
news.
us some tipping fees.
Oh, yes.
50 per ton.
Okay, so about
Yes.
what, $8,000 for the month of December was saved in our tipping fees because of this diversion. So that's
Tremendous.
great
And,
news.
You know, so it's money savings, and it's doing something very, very good. Very
Indeed.
good. So again, it's just really important, and it is good news. And I wanted to commend the residents of Mount Pearl for doing such a great job and being so diligent. You never know with a program like this if it's going to be successful right out of the gate. But this is great success.
Yeah, it is. Good news.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Councillor Lane?
Dare I open my mouth?
Oh, come on, Councillor Lane, don't be like that.
Anyway, a couple of things. First one relates to the glacier. And I know as part of the reconfiguration of the ice making plant and the heating and all that type of stuff, the heaters that were in the glacier all along have been taken down.
Right.
And there's new ones, I guess, being put up or are put up, but it's not working yet. I spoke to Blair Delaney this morning, and he said could happen as early as next week that we could have heat, but it could be till the end of March, depending on a number of factors with the new plant and so on. But I've gotten a couple of complaints from some residents who are down watching the hockey games, for example, the Mount Pearl Blades, who, by the way, are still doing fabulous, 3 points ahead.
That's the seniors, I'm
The
assuming.
seniors.
Because the juniors are also doing well.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. That's excellent. But anyway, the seniors are looking good for the hurler, I got to say.
Yep.
But anyway, you're down there in the stands, you're absolutely froze to death. And I've had a number of people said, well, I'm like froze to death down there. So I'm wondering, Mr. Lush or somebody can check into, or Mr. Lewis, you know, I'm not talking about getting these big, huge salamanders that they call them to heat the whole building, but is there some way we can put run a wire and put a couple of temporary heaters to blow a bit of heat towards the people that are sitting there in the arena or something to get a bit of heat? Because if it's going to be another 3 months, and with the hockey schedule and figure skating and everything else, it is cold enough to totally frost. Well, Frosty Festival, they have a contingency. They are bringing these large salamanders, they call them,
Okay.
for Frosty Festival to heat the whole building. The issue is, though, for hockey games and all that stuff for the next 2 to 3 months, you're there sat in the stand, you're froze to death. Something to direct a little bit of heat their way. Surely goodness there's something temporary that might be able to be done. So I'd ask that one of our staff, whoever it is, at least inquire about doing that.
A good point, though, because I know a lot of people come up in the old heating system where the vent would blow down.
That's right.
That's where a lot of the seniors would sit because it was a nice warm section.
Yes.
And right now that's gone.
That's gone.
So valid point.
Cold up to freeze you.
But I know if you spoke to my father, who sat many mornings at 6:30 in the morning at the Smallwood Arena watching my
Yes.
hockey practices
Yeah.
when there was no heat,
Yes.
he'd say,
absolutely.
"Well, I had to dress for it. We're getting soft." That's
Yeah.
what he'd say. But yes, a valid point. A
He
valid
was a
point.
little more motivated, I guess, for, you know. He wanted to go see little Jimmy play.
Indeed,
that's right.
indeed. Yep.
Next item, Your Worship, relates to, and I had a couple of complaints over Christmas on this. There are still people in the city who are putting their garbage out the night before. And when I got a couple of calls on it, I went out. I made it my business on a couple of nights to actually go out and drive around the neighbourhoods. And there's no doubt that there's a number of them
Yes.
where people are putting their garbage out the night before. They're still doing it. I brought this up before. I would request that our municipal enforcement, Mr. Lewis, be engaged in dealing with this. I've asked this in the past. It's not rocket science. I mean, like I know, for example, on my street, O'Flaherty Crescent, garbage pickups tomorrow. So all the houses there in Powers Pond, for sure, garbage pickup tomorrow. So that means an MEO who's working this evening can drive around at 11 or 12 o'clock tonight and drive down all those streets in Powers Pond. You're going to see if there's garbage out. You can do something about it. So it's not like it's something that they have to come across or wait for. I mean, it's very easy. Look at the schedule, see where the garbage is going to be put out the night before, drive around and start issuing tickets or fines or warnings or whatever we have under our regulations to deal with it. So I'd request to take a look at that.
Okay.
Next item, I had a request from a resident there last week. He had a hot water boiler. And, of course, there's no bulk garbage until, in our area, until I think it's May is when the bulk garbage is scheduled for. So he has a hot water boiler between now and May. He called us, of course, we're not taking bulk garbage. We'll take it for $45. And I guess his point was, why can't I throw it aboard the pickup and just drop it off at the depot? I said, well, no, you got to drop it off down to Robin Hood Bay. I gave him the 311 and said, call, I don't know if it's on Saturday or whenever you can drop it off at Robin Hood Bay. Maybe it's every day, I don't know. But the question, so I know that there's a company, and Deputy Mayor Don Drew with the town of Bay Bulls actually works for this company. And I spoke to Don. I called Don last week about it. And he tells me that in a number of communities, I believe Paradise and Portugal Cove and other communities now, they have these, I'll call it a dumpster for lack of a better term, on city property down by their depot or whatever. And then if citizens have metals, anything with metal, they can just take it aboard their car truck, throw it in the dumpster, and then they take it, their company takes it away every week or whatever the case might be. So it's convenience for citizens to be able to drop it off in their own community, get rid of it.
Right.
We do not have that. So he did tell me that he at some point in time had met with staff and talked about it, but I know we've been going through some changes with, staff retiring and new people coming on and whatever. So there may have been some delays there.
Right.
But other towns are doing it, he tells me, and it's working quite well. So I would ask that we take a look at providing that service for our citizens so that they could drop off their hot water boilers or whatever at the depot, if they had it.
At no cost to the
At
city.
no
you're saying?
cost to the city,
Right.
and no cost to them either.
Right.
Right?
Would it just be metals or any bulk garbage?
No, metals.
Just
Anything with metal. But he said, like, if you had an office chair and the legs and the bottom piece that was all metal, they'd take that. If it was fridges, stoves, washers, dishwashers, hot water boilers, anything with metal in it. A bike, if it's got a metal in the bike, anything with metal, they'd take it. You take it, throw it in this dumpster, and they'd haul it away once a week or whatever the arrangement is, right?
Right.
Would cost us nothing. They get the money from the metal,
Right,
obviously.
yep.
Costs us nothing to get rid of it, and the citizen can drop it off for free instead of having to pay $45 to us.
All right. Mr. Lush wants to have a comment there?
Yeah, Your Worship, Donald Drew was in to speak to us, Newfoundland Metals. The problem is that what happens is that a few will ruin it for the many. They'll go use it as an everything garbage. So what will come in the morning, there will be dishwashers and hot water tanks all over the parking lot because the resident can't get it into the dumpster. And then other people start putting recyclables and garbage, and it becomes unmanageable. So like similarly when we had a tree dump, we have it locked and we have it supervised, because if not, it becomes the illegal dumping ground of irresponsible people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not manageable, but that's what happens. I've seen it in other locations. The places that you mostly speak of are municipalities that don't have a bulk garbage pickup. We do. So instead of offering a service where at least you, as a resident, pick up a couple times of the year, the other municipalities offer no pickup. So that's why they entertain the other option, but it is an expensive option, and it leads to a messy looking area.
Yeah.
Because it will be near Powers Pond is the only spot near the depot, and the next thing, paint starts showing up, everything starts showing.
Valid point.
So I would recommend we don't proceed with it.
Yeah, I saw, there's another example is up on the Sobeys parking lot, up where is it Epilepsy Dump Off or Drop Off, Salvation Army? And you go up there for clothing, and there's televisions and children's toys and computer desks all scattered over. So, valid point.
Well,
Councillor Lane?
I don't know, is it an option, Mr. Lush, to have some arrangement that if people wanted to drop it off in the daytime when there was a staff person working or something like that? Or certain days, one day a week even. Like even if we designated a day a week or a day a month when there was a staff person.
Yeah, we could bring it back to committee and look into
If
it.
you could look into that even, you know.
Can we bring that back to committee and discuss
I
that?
mean, it's another service
Sure.
that is saving people money. It's not costing us anything. If
Yep.
we can do it, I don't know why we wouldn't
Yep,
entertain the
okay.
idea.
Why don't we take it back to committee and we'll discuss it further, yeah?
And the final item, Your Worship, I'm just wondering if we could maybe send a note along to Town Council in the City of Corner Brook on the passing of one of their own, Councillor Renouf.
Right, indeed.
Pass along our condolences. That's it, Your
We'll
Worship.
do
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Stoyles?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to mention Councillor Vanoff, but I've known him for a number of years, I guess, and I want to pass along my sympathy as well. A couple of things I want to mention. The Chamber of Commerce had their event on January 6th. I attended, and I know you attended, and Councillor Lane attended.
Councillor Aker was there as well.
Councillor Aker was there,
Mhm.
and it was great to see them getting started off early in the year and getting some action done on their strategic planning session. And they're going to have other sessions and more information to come. And once they do, they're going to let us know. We're only looking forward to working closely with them again, as we do, as we have done in the past.
Yeah, so they presented their strategic planning initiative and they were looking for feedback from members.
That's right.
And there was some good feedback there, and like you said, they were excited about it and appreciated the attendance there. So yeah, that's good stuff.
It was good. The other thing I want to mention is tree drop off. I know it's free pickup and drop off. I know people are still just taking their tree down because Christmas is just up. I'm just wondering, is there a deadline? I know a number of people have called me and said they took their tree down, they have it in their back garden, and they want to know if there was a day specifically earheard to putting out their tree. And I know we've been picking trees up. I've seen our trucks go around and have picked trees up. I'm just wondering, is there a deadline? Because I know of at least 3 or 4 people that have contacted me and have their trees in the back garden because when they were going to work that day it was too windy and they didn't want it all over the street and that. And I'm just wondering, do we have a specific drop-off place for trees? Or if there's a deadline when we're stopping picking them up?
Mr. Lush?
Yes, Your Worship. The drop-off for the trees is mostly pickup, actually, but if you want to drop one off down by the Smallwood Arena, by the ball fields where it's always historically been, that's the location.
Okay.
We're picking up trees over the next 2 weeks. It's in the bulk garbage schedule, but I'm not sure what the actual collection cycle is, but it'll soon be up. There is a time.
There's a defined period of 2 weeks.
I recommend for a resident to look at the bulk garbage, but I don't actually know off the top of my head what it actually is.
So if they have a tree in their back garden, they should put it out over the next 2 weeks, so our staff can pick them up.
I know they're collecting them now, and the collection period's for 2 weeks, so they should be able. I think it's out with the regular garbage.
Just put them out with the
Sorry,
regular
I can't
garbage.
answer the question.
Okay, well, we
Okay.
can check into it and,
Well, when we have our next public meeting,
Right.
maybe we can mention it again.
indeed,
Yeah,
yeah.
but a lot of people have been asking
Right.
about it, and because it has been windy, they've been taking it down, just putting it in their back garden. I know a lot of people don't put it out sometimes until bulk garbage,
Right.
because I've heard people say my tree was in my back garden. It's not going to hurt me. Is in my back garden until
Sure.
April or May. So I'm just, people have been asking me, and
Right.
I knew we did have Smallwood Arena in the past, but with all, the stuff on to go down there, I didn't know
Yeah.
if it was still. the
So
location.
there is a defined schedule. It's in the bulk garbage schedule, so they can consult that, check that, and then put it out with the regular garbage and be picked up, right?
The only other thing I want to mention, Your Worship, is the North East Avalon Joint Council is planning on having the Minister of Municipal Affairs at their next meeting. The request has gone in. I understand that the Minister will be at that next meeting.
Okay.
In Torbay
And the date?
is the 3rd Wednesday, which is the 17th, I do believe.
Okay. All right, thank you, Councillor Stoyles. Councillor Walsh?
Well, Your Worship, I'm just going to take the opportunity, since it's the first meeting, to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I know it gets a little old, but it is our first meeting for the year. To all
Mhm.
my colleagues and staff and members of the public, I just want to mention in doing that as well, this year for the first night celebrations, what a turnout there was.
Oh, it's
at
a
the,
big crowd,
was
wasn't
really
it?
an impressive thing at the glacier. And I was talking to somebody Sunday evening who had been at the family skate Sunday afternoon. He said, I've never seen such a huge turnout at the glacier. I don't think it has anything to do with the change in the arena or anything, because the other second arena is not even commissioned and open yet. But it's great to see that people are getting out, getting active, and
Indeed.
and getting involved. Yeah, the weather
Yep.
probably has something to do with it as well. The only other thing I want to mention is sort of an upcoming thing, but the next meeting is just a couple of days prior to. On the 28th, we do have our Hall of Fame, and also we recognize some of our athletes as well. That's a combined format this year, taking place at the Reed Center. We're hoping to be able to have a reception for some of the inductees. We mentioned before Christmas that we do have now the plaques and the various members of the Hall of Fame situated here in the atrium here at City Hall.
Yep.
And it's kind of nice to see. We're still striving to try to find a more permanent
home for them.
them, and we're in the process of doing that right now. And it's basically for me, and I do want to tell Councillor Lane that we still do love them. There's no need for them to feel bad about being piled up on again today, but it's just the way it goes sometimes.
That's
you know?
right. All right. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Group hug after. Councillor Aker?
Yeah, one last little thing, Your Worship. I made a note of it here earlier on today. On January 20th, the Sport Alliance will be having their AGM. And as everybody's aware, the Sport Alliance is going through a little bit of an identity crisis right now. So I'd like to encourage council members, if they can get out, as well as all the sports representatives, January 20th, 7:30 here at City Hall. So please put that in your calendars. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Could we get an email sent out on that one?
What's in your AGM?
Yeah, AGM email requested. All right. Well,
I thought there was a chance that may have been.
I don't have anything further to add. Quite a lengthy meeting. We don't even have any television cameras here, so let's hope this is the start of a good new year now. So can I have a mover to adjourn our meeting? Councillor Lane, we are adjourned.
Good job there.